Welcome to the Business of Thinking podcast. This is the place for high achievers who want more than motivation. They want mastery. Here we skip the surface level talk and go straight into the psychology of high performance.
Hi and welcome to the Business of Thinking. My name's Richard Reed and today I'm delighted to be joined by Ali Cammelletti, who is a leadership coach and a keynote speaker. And she's got a fantastic backstory which she shared with me before today's podcast. So very shortly I'm going to invite her just to give you a thumbnail sketch of her background, her life, how she's got into the work that she's doing now. And we're also going to be talking quite a bit today about the theme of resilience, which is really important for those of you out there who are ambitious entrepreneurs or leaders looking to achieve peak performance. So really looking forward to hearing Ali's take on things and hopefully giving you some really useful takeaways that you can start to apply to your own experience. But enough from me. Ali, welcome. Fantastic to have you on the show.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And just give us a little bit of a take on your upbringing, some of the things that have maybe informed the way that you approach things, and really what's brought you to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, you talked about resilience, and I feel like that's why I am where I am today, is because my level of resilience, my upbringing, as we say, wasn't really beaver cleaver like for those of you in the States, right? And so I had to grow up quickly at a very young age and navigate some really challenging times. I had a lot of family members that struggled with addiction in the family, which can always push a young child to have to be a parent a little
Mm, mm,
quicker than they'd like to. And so it's boded well for me in my adult life because I really can handle things. And I've done a lot of work on that to allow myself to be healthy in that and not let it drive me in a way that isn't healthy.
mm.
Because when we grow up like that, a lot of characteristics can come up. I work with something called positive intelligence. So we talk about saboteurs.
Okay.
And so some of my saboteurs that I focus on, is a stickler, so perfectionism. When you grow up in an environment that doesn't allow you to feel safe, you can want to control everything and make it sure everything's perfect so that you don't have that same feeling that you had when you were younger. I'm also a bit of a hyperachiever. I'm all about focusing on getting it done and getting it done right. And with that, I would say my younger years, I really strived for my worth through my career.
Yeah.
I worked really hard at a very young age. I mean, right out of college, I was managing restaurants down in San Francisco in my early 20s. And then the other part is the hypervigilant, which will come up, and hypervigilant being anxious,
Yeah.
right? So my attachment style leans towards that anxious attachment style. And I've done a lot of work to try to get to a more secure place in my attachment style.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And in what you've already said, there's so many different directions we can go in. And I can well imagine there's quite a few people listening to this who have those traits themselves. And it's spurred them on as it has for you to bigger and better things.
Yes.
But it often comes at a cost, doesn't it? And it's striking that balance and having the self-awareness to do that. And you mentioned a few things there: perfectionism, control, anxiety, and I guess amongst all of that, probably taking some of these things to the extreme. So striking a balance.
Oh, yeah.
And one that sort of comes to mind for me is that people who tend to be very resilient often struggle with knowing when they're almost too resilient, when actually enough is enough. And, in terms of dealing with things themselves, but also maybe taking things on from other people. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah. And how that showed up for me was my health.
Okay.
And so in the States, we have something that we talk about with early childhood trauma and what can happen with that with your health. And if you continue that momentum with over taking care of everybody else but yourself.
Mm, mm.
So, younger, well, let's see here. I was 30 when they diagnosed me with what I call the crazy tumor.
Okay.
And I had a tumor that wrapped around my liver, and it was so large. They had never seen one that big before. And they said, oh, it was from birth control pills. Depends on your medical belief system. I do believe that it was from the amount of trauma. I went to a holistic doctor and she said, you've got to stop taking care of everybody else. Like, this is why this is happening. Well, at the time, literally, my grandmother was uh, not doing well, and my grandfather had just passed. And I was the only one to take care of my 80 something grandmother in my 30s while I had a business. And at the same time, I ended up having an ex husband that he chose to seek attention somewhere else. And so I was going through a divorce as well.
Okay. So not
And
doing anything by halves here. No.
well, the thing was is that it was like, I can't not take care of other people right now. I don't have a choice. I have an
Mm, mm,
obligation
mm.
for my family to take care of my grandmother who put me through college. And so I said, we need to take it out. We need to remove the tumor.
Mm.
And so during my recovery, it was tough. They removed 65% of my liver and my gallbladder at that time.
Wow.
And it was major surgery.
Yeah.
I didn't tell anyone because I needed the business. And at the time, I had an event planning business.
So you couldn't even take a proper rest then? No.
Oh no. Oh no. There was no time for that.
Yeah.
I had things to get done. And I think that, one of the questions you had asked me is like, what have I learned over the years? And I've learned that if we don't stop and change how we operate, situations will continue to show
Mm,
themselves
mm.
over and over and over again. So it's up to us to look at those situations and be like, I can't do it like this anymore.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in what you're saying. I think often the body shouts louder, doesn't it, when we're not listening? And I'm intrigued, and maybe I'm showing my own ignorance here, but that sounds like quite a significant tumor. Looking back, did you have an awareness beforehand that things were out of kilter? Was it a case of you were just trying to focus on everything else?
Oh no. I was so clueless. In my 30s? Oh, no. Not at all. I mean, I did know that I had burned myself out in restaurants and had left San Francisco at the time and moved back to Oregon.
Mm.
And I was building a business plan to start my own business and what I wanted to do. But my sights were always for business and success and just pushing myself.
Yeah.
It didn't take until, uh, 10 years later. 10 years later when I kinda numbed through all the trauma, right? Because after my grandfather died, taking care of my grandmother, she died in 6 months, and then my father, who was her son, died 6 months later. And
Wow.
so I lost a whole portion of my family in about a year and a half and went through a divorce and bought a house to live in. So when you look at the stressors, all of them at once,
Mm.
and then 10 years later, I started wanting to have a child and had gotten married again. And it was the adoption process that was like, oh no, you can't do it this way anymore, lady. You got to change something. And
And was that coming from
that's
you or coming
when
from the adoption agency saying that?
I was talking
Okay,
in third
good
person.
good to know. Good to know. Yeah.
So yeah, I knew at that time I was struggling with anxiety and depression together
Yeah.
when I was going through the adoption wait, and that's where I learned my greatest tools that I rely on every day now, and what really have helped my resilience as well.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. There's a whole raft of things in there, and I'm not sure how easy it was to talk about this, but I really appreciate your openness about it. Tell us about some of the tools that you've developed that maybe might be relevant for people listening.
Yeah, so when I think about resilience and strengthening my resilience, one, it was having new experiences. That's really important, and I carry these tools to my daughter. She is now 8 years old. And uh, I make sure that she has a lot of new experiences to build her resilience. The other thing is self care. I'm
Mm.
big on self care. Self care,
Mm.
I don't even think I knew that word when I was in my 30s, definitely not in my 20s. I was like, what does that mean? You get a haircut? I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I kind of say, like, you must go lay on a beach and do nothing for a week once a year minimum. Like, that is my requirement for part of my self care. The other part is exercise. I am lucky. The picture behind me is our landscape in Bend, Oregon. I live in the mountains.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
so every day I spend at least 20 minutes and I go walk down by the river. And so right now in Bend, we're having amazing sunrises and sunsets. Like, the sky is orange and pink. And I got to see two blue herons come in on the river this morning as they were landing. So, like, nature is huge. That grounding, being outside, being in nature. I no longer have my earbuds in. I stopped that probably a year ago because I'd always listen to
Yeah. Yeah.
content
Yeah.
while
And
I
that's
was
the thing, isn't
walking.
it? Multitasking. Yeah.
But now I just really take that time. The other big tool for me is gratitude practice.
Okay.
And that was brought on during my adoption wait, and I have not let that go. Every day, I have a spot when I go on my walk that overlooks the river and where the sunrise is, and I just state one thing I'm grateful for. And then it seems like in October, for some reason, I end up doing 30 days of gratitude. So when I start to notice I'm feeling a little negative, because I'm human, like,
Mm.
I've got
Mm.
to reach for these tools,
Mm.
I do something I'm grateful for every day. And I do not repeat, I do not miss a day. And my daughter and I started adding in act of kindness that we
Okay.
also do.
So how does that work? The act of kindness.
Well, I do a lot of volunteering at her school, so it's kind of easy to fill that in. Um, I don't know. One day it was as simple as, like, I was at Costco, one of the big stores here, and I saw somebody's ID, like membership ID, and I picked it up and I took it to the front desk, right? Just going beyond thinking about myself
Mm.
and doing something for somebody else to make their day a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's self kindness, right? Like,
Yeah.
having a down day and not opening up my computer
Yeah.
and just being really present.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important. There's some really interesting things you've said in there. And you started off with saying, having some time on a beach at least once a year. That's
Yes.
great. And then you started talking about the day to day disciplines, didn't you? And I think for a lot of people, they tend to have those holidays or those long weekends, but from my perspective, working with lots of different people, it's what you do on a regular basis that makes a difference. Because otherwise, you're going through this sort of pendulum, aren't you? Where you're flat, you're flat out, and then you're flat out. So those little rituals are really important, irrespective of how you're feeling on the particular day. So really pleased to hear you say that.
Well, and noticing when things feel like they're not balanced, right? I
Mm.
strive for balance. My calendar's color coded for balance.
Okay.
How much exercise I bring into my life, which every day I do multiple exercise pieces, but also it is just really noticing. Like, I traveled a ton in 2024, and this year I took off from so much travel because it was too much,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was travel for work.
Yeah. Travel's a nice idea, isn't it? But the reality of it can be quite tiring and disruptive to routine as well.
Yeah, and I'm raising an 8-year-old daughter now,
Yeah.
and that looks different.
Yeah.
And I'm on this journey of, I have 10 more years that I believe before I look to retire. And those 10 years I'm focusing on, those are the 10 years she's with me. So I am working about part time. I am not working full time.
Hmm.
And if I want to ramp it up after she leaves and not retire, that's my choice. But right now, I can't get back this time with her.
Yeah. So your priorities have changed in many ways, haven't they? So career's still important, but there are other things that you're thinking about in all of this. Yeah. How many people profess that their families are important to them, but their career takes over. So it's been intentional, isn't it, about how you use your time?
It's very intentional. I mean, my adoption process, I waited 4 years for her, and 20 plus moms, because the mom had to pick us,
Okay.
said no. And so it was heart wrenching. And so I really, really take a lot of focus into how I am as a mother and what I'm providing for her and how she's going to be able to operate in this world.
Yeah, so important. So in a way, you're acting as a template for your daughter, aren't you? How you conduct yourself as much as anything else. And I'm just thinking about some of the leaders out there that may be listening. This is so important, isn't it? That even in this day and age, lots of leaders, entrepreneurs, still get caught up in this idea that you've got to be infallible, you've got to be superhuman, and not only does that take a toll on you, but it also gives out dangerous messages to the people around you, doesn't it, about what you need to do in order to get on in life.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
So just circling back, some of the things that you mentioned, some of those signs of your behaviour sort of in your 20s and your 30s that maybe sort of got in the way of your health. Let's just talk about some of those things in a little bit more detail, because I'm sure there'll be lots of things in there that resonate with people listening. Tell us a little bit more about sort of typical habits that you had back in those days, and maybe how you sort of addressed those over time.
Well, I have worked in the hospitality industry for 30 years. And the hospitality industry, maybe it's changing, maybe, but it's known for how much time you put in your work. And restaurants are a real grind.
Mm.
And so, having done restaurant work, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week. And there was no question about it.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I was building my career. And I see now I was trying to earn my worth through my production. And I see that often with people. If they're not feeling
Yeah.
satisfied in other areas, they throw it all into their work,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Very, very
So,
true.
as yeah, even like when things might feel out of control and chaotic in my own life now, I'll notice I'll like be very perfectionistic on things in my work, right? I'll go in and just start detailing out a spreadsheet
Yeah.
because it'll
Yeah.
make me feel good. Like I have
Yeah.
control over something.
Yeah.
And so I also, I mean, I was in restaurants, so there was a lot of drinking and a lot of numbing.
Mm.
I was not thinking about, oh, I need to pay attention to my bones because when I get in my 50s, it's going to be a thing,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm.
And I need exercise every day. No, none of that was happening. I literally would work myself to the grind and I would drink a good amount and eat a good amount because you're in San Francisco and it was the best food at that time. I'm sure it still is, but uh, that was my life. And there wasn't like vacations and time on the beach. I was just
Mm.
really worked myself very, very hard.
Mm. And I guess in any environment, it's often hard to sort of step back from that when the work is relentless. But I guess most of the people around you are also engaged in those kind of behaviours. It's often only when you step out of it, or whether that's intentional but more likely enforced, as perhaps it was in your case, that you then have an opportunity to take stock and look at alternative viewpoints. So yeah, really really interesting that you mentioned that.
And there's been a couple times over the years I've taken about 6 months off in between big changes. And so it was after restaurants, I ended up taking some time off. I went and worked for an around the world yacht racing company out of the UK for like a little stint.
I love the
And
way you throw these
then
little polished baubles in. Yeah.
and then I took 6 months off and moved back to Bend
Yeah.
and recalibrated. And I could see like I went down to San Francisco for something after I'd been up here in the mountains again. And instantly, like getting into traffic, I was like anxious.
Mm.
I was like, oh, I'm meant to be back in the mountains. Like
Yeah.
this is where my heart is
Yeah.
and where I feel most balanced.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good that you noticed that now. And it was interesting what you were saying about that perfectionism when you find, you're sort of half joking but half serious, filling out spreadsheets. It sometimes those old habits die hard, don't they? But I guess often it's having that added self awareness. You can see those red flags that say, right, I've seen this before. These are things I need to take stock of and take proactive measures about. Yeah.
Yeah, I also make a joke of like when you see my yard looking really perfect, you know there's something else going on. Because I
Mm.
will go right out into my front yard and I am like planting flowers and manicuring and edging, and everything looks really pretty on the outside because the inside I'm wrestling with something.
Yeah, so that's interesting as well because often we think about chaos, don't we? When people are overworked and stressed, chaos, mess, but quite the opposite in terms of what you're talking about. Yeah. So perfectionism. What else? What else are the red flags for you that maybe might resonate with some of the people listening?
Oh, anxiety. Definitely during COVID, I know the clients that I was working with, no matter their age or their gender, I would say 95% struggled with anxiety. And I still see a bit of that. It's still there. I
Mm.
mean, we're going to have data later about what happened for us during COVID,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how that had affected us. We may not have that data right now, but I think we're feeling a little bit of an increase of it too because we're having some political pieces that are happening for us right now. And so people are feeling uneasy. But I got to say, part of me, I'm like, if we can make it through COVID, we can make it through this. We are going to get through this. So I struggle with anxiety. It's not something that it's like, oh, I fixed that. That
Yeah.
is something that's part of my world. And the exercise maintains like a level of reducing my anxiety for
Yeah.
sure. Like that daily getting your heart rate up is so important. The gratitude helps with the anxiety. I take lavender pills, which and essential oils need be per se to help with the anxiety. I feel like I might forever kind of be on L-theanine, which is a supplement. Um, yeah, Huberman Lab turned me onto that supplement, but it helps with just kind of a bit of adrenal fatigue piece
Mm.
because there's a piece of that which you talk about adrenals. I have definitely worked my adrenals.
I would imagine so. Yeah. From what you've said. Yeah, yeah. I'm a big advocate of lavender. So when I used to work for Transport for London with the train drivers, lots of trauma, it was a great way of just bringing that anxiety down to then be able to do some productive work with people. So definitely, I buy into that. And just sort of going back to what you were saying about anxiety, and it sounds like this applies to you, and I think it probably applies to a lot of other people. A lot of high achievers, I find, and maybe you do as well, are not necessarily driven by achievement. They're driven by the fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough, rather than moving towards something. So they don't ever truly get the benefit
Yeah.
of what they do achieve.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're saying that. I'm kind of thinking about myself. uh, I read Don Miguel Ruiz The Mastery of Love, I want to say probably 8 years ago, and I started implementing the, I call it a value, a personal value of love.
Okay.
And people might be like, love is a value. Like, how's that look? And I said, all my actions are out of love, not fear. Right. So let's take, for instance, my choice of this next 10 years. I am choosing to reduce my level of work out of love for my child and my own well-being because I know I'm going to burn myself out at a certain point. Like, I've had this company for 11 years,
Mm, mm.
and another 10 years if I'm working at this pace, I get bored. Is what happens too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I continue to push myself per se and notice when I get bored to get innovative with different things that are happening. And I'm doing that right now with my business a bit. I can't smooth sail for long. I got to bring more in as far as just what challenges me and makes me feel like I'm growing. Am I learning? I'm a learner,
Yeah.
right? I'm a 5 in the Enneagram, but I'm a 5 with a lot of feelings. So it's kind of
Okay.
conflicting.
Okay.
So, as far as just not living by fear, right? I'm not fearful that I'm not going to have enough money to retire properly. Like, that'll all work itself out. I just really try not to focus to be driven by money. It's
Mm.
just, it's not how I want to be wired. Uh, and it's not fear that I'm not going to have enough to put my daughter through college, right?
Mm,
I know if I give her with these really, really solid tools now to be resilient and feel loved and feel safe, she is going to be able to get her way through college if that's what she even chooses to do, right? Things are
mm, mm.
changing so much
Absolutely.
compared to when I was younger. It was like, you have to go to college if you
Yeah.
want a job.
Yeah.
Like, that was really pushed. And so I go back to actions out of love, not fear, all the time.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's almost a daily occurrence that you remind yourself of that. So you stay on point.
Yep.
And I think that's so important because a lot of people would profess to have that value or that focus, but actually, if it's not uppermost in your mind, if you're not rehearsing putting that at the forefront of things, you can very easily lose sight, can't you, and compromise that quite quickly.
For sure. For sure. It's like, I think anytime we're like, something's just not right, I'm not feeling right,
Mm,
I would bet your values are not in alignment.
mm.
But you better know your values first. And I know my values. I'm very familiar with them because it's part of the work I do with clients.
Yeah,
Is like, what are your core values? That's your compass.
yeah, yeah. And it's the same with organisations, isn't it? Lots of organisations have this kind of stuff on their websites, but actually, are they living and breathing it? And even if it felt relevant at the time, is it still relevant now? Is it still being implemented and lived throughout the organisation? So all of these things definitely we need to be aware and we need to continually revisit them to make sure that we stay aligned because yeah, very soon you get out of kilter as you've just said.
And you can look at it like, when I have feelings about my business at times and I'm like, something just needs to shift. I'm not sure what it is, but something
Mm.
needs to shift. And I just get this intuition that something needs to shift. I could look at it as like, oh, I'm fearful that I'm not being like innovative or something. Or I can look at it as, no, I'm getting a sign that it's time to learn something new and create new offerings. It's all perspective.
And I guess some of it is distinguishing that from anxiety, isn't it? Because anxiety often makes us restless and want to make change. So, it's having the self awareness to know what's driving that.
Yep. Like, I know that I get time anxious. I don't like to be late.
Yeah, I know that
It's a
one
thing
well.
for me.
Yeah, yeah,
I like to be on time. But if I start feeling anxious, I'm like, oh, I overpacked my calendar. Like, maybe you should pay attention to that, Allie. It's great that you've color coded it, but let's leave some space in between.
yeah, yeah. So again, it's revisiting these things on a regular basis, isn't it? Not just sort of setting them up and letting them run. Yeah.
And what's the base of all that, Richard? And I feel like we talked about it when you and I talked on my podcast. It's mindfulness.
Yeah, yeah, and I think more than ever, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. The world is getting faster, isn't it? And technology, as helpful as it is, also encourages us to speed up. And so, we make lots of these decisions from the inappropriate part of the brain that is all very sort of task orientated, anxiety driven, not always doing things in the best of our interests. So, yeah, mindfulness in different ways is so important. And lots of people think it's quite warm and fuzzy, don't they? But it's absolutely something you can apply day to day. And, some of the things you were mentioning about your walk, taking your pods out and actually experiencing the nature more fully, those are forms of mindfulness. Even eating a sandwich in your lunch break at work, how you do that can be mindfulness. It doesn't have to be doing completely different things or removing yourself from situations. It could be just how you engage with them.
Yes, exactly.
So tell us about, thank you so much for sharing everything about your life, your philosophy, how you approach that day to day. How does this translate into the work that you do with your clients?
I feel grateful that I have had the experiences I've had because it allows me a wide spectrum to pull from when I work with my clients. And my clients, they're often going through different things, right? A
Mm.
lot of them struggle with similar perfectionism, um, striving for their worth through their work, and anxiety. And so I get to share what I have learned. I have a gal that I've worked with, oh gosh, I think for 3 years now. And she's in one of my Spark groups. So I have small groups of leaders
Okay.
that we meet twice a month, and they get homework, and we have
Yep.
focused topics that we talk
Yep.
about. And recently she's like, "Ali, can you believe all of this is going on and I'm not sick?" And I'm like, "That shows your resilience. You built that resilience."
Mm.
Because when I first met her, she would just get taken down. And this woman wouldn't just get little sick, she'd get like walking pneumonia sick.
Wow.
And her immune system would be like shutting down. And so we focused on like self-care. Your body is keeping score. It is up to you because this will continue to happen. What's important? What brings you joy? And really focusing on that. And so much of what I do, yes, it's leadership. How do we lead? But how do we be able to lead from a place of strength and
Mm.
resilience and softness too?
Interesting that you use that word. It's quite. It sounds like it's quite a holistic approach to leadership, which I think is fantastic, isn't it? And the kind of things that you're talking about are often the things that people sort of make shortcuts on, particularly when the going gets tough. Those are the things they cut out, and even things like eating properly or sleeping properly. And as you say, the body keeps count, doesn't it? You can get away with it for a few days or weeks, but actually, it's a false economy because you pay for it further down the line. Some people pay for it more than others, and how often do people have their 2 week holiday and they spend the first week sleeping, or they catch a cold? It's because the body's been holding all that stuff at bay because you haven't been addressing it. Going back to what we were talking about with mindfulness, then actually, if you're not registering these things on a day to day basis and adapting your approach, you pay a heavier price in the long term.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. So tell us about something that you're working on at the moment. What's a particular sort of passion project at the moment? You mentioned sort of the groups that you're running. Anything else interesting that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, well, the last year I implemented groups. And the reason for groups was to reduce a bit of my travel of going on site and speaking to companies,
Yeah.
but instead having us meet virtually. And I work a lot in the vacation rental industry right now. And so we don't have anybody in the same market in the group, right? So right now I have a team or group that one is in Alabama, the other one is on the Oregon coast, and then the other one is in Tahoe, California, and then
Okay.
another one is in like North Carolina.
Wow, so
And
really spread
so
out.
everybody's in, yeah, all my clients are always spread out. I don't have
Yeah.
anybody really local. And they come together, we do this homework and focus, Recently it was, I want you to produce your org chart and I want you to do a worksheet on how you ended up with your org chart the way it is. And it was beautiful because one of the owners is like, "Oh my, this all makes sense. I get it now. This gentleman that we hired for director of operations has too much of a load. No wonder he can't be successful." And so I love those aha moments that they get to
Mm,
have and
mm,
then lean
mm,
on each other because they
mm.
don't feel competitive because they're not next door to me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they can be really vulnerable and transparent and lean on each other for that support that they're looking for.
Fantastic. And in a way, I guess even that's a form of mindfulness, isn't it? Then putting aside dedicated time and you facilitating that to reflect on things that get caught up in the everyday busyness.
Yes. And then the other thing, it was just a couple months ago, I was feeling again a little bit of this uneasiness of like getting a little bored. I want to bring on something different. I want something that I can go to a company when they say, "What do you do?" Because sometimes it can be hard to explain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, people build confidence and they grow, and this is your succession plan in your company, but what more can I do? And so I'm in the process of building a survey where I go into companies and I ask them what their core values are, and then I take their core values and I build the survey their entire company on their core values to see which ones are not in alignment,
So
and we
important.
use that customized focus for them to be like, "Okay, we have some struggles right now in team building and it's showing,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And what can we do?" And then I can come in with a action plan of quarterly team building, daily processes that we're going to implement to have everybody come together, whether it be like, I have a client that calls them high fives, right?
Okay.
How do you recognize each other in your organization and compliment each other for a job well done?
Yeah.
And let's do it according to the actual core value per se. Like, I saw the way you were so quick to help out that team member and jump in when they were struggling in this area. Great job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. Have you heard of somebody called Zach Mercurio? So Zach Mercurio talks about this.
Oh,
This idea of noticing and mattering. So not just job well done, but talking about what it is about us that has contributed to that, but also how what we do is important, how it contributes to the bigger picture. So it
no,
makes
I have
people
not
more
heard about
engaged.
that. Yeah.
Definitely check him out. Definitely worth looking at. But it's exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about, and it goes such a long way. We assume that people know that they're doing a good job, but actually engage them, however junior they might be, and let them see how that contributes to the bigger picture is so important to avoid silos and all those sort of things that get in the way of the values and the high function of the organisation. So I think that's fantastic work that you're doing. So I fully endorse that. I think it's fantastic. So we're coming towards the end for today's session, but before we finish up, any last words of wisdom that you want to impart to the audience that you think might be helpful?
I would just say implement gratitude. I do think it's the secret sauce. I really do. And then taking that time to be mindful each day, whether it's at the start of the day, at the end of the day, or both, and reflecting on your day, not in an anxious way, but in a way of what went well, what are some areas that I could probably pay attention to. And I just think that, how I live is like I live without any regrets every day. No regrets. If somebody's, I don't know, if I have somebody come into my head, I call them and I'm like, hey, you just kind of came into my mind. I wanted to reach out and tell you I was thinking about you.
Yeah. How often do you hear people say, I thought about them and I never got around to calling them? So
Of
true.
course.
Otherwise, life gets in the way, doesn't it? Yeah. Ali, thank you so much. If anybody wants to find out more about the work that you do, what's the best way to find out and to get in contact?
Yeah. Sparkyourmindset.com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. Ali, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation. Love to get you back on at some point in the future to chat even more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
This is the business of thinking. Mastery doesn't end here. See you in the next episode.